They say the temple opens once every 100 years, but it's not the wind or the stars that unlock its doors. It's the weight of a single person, its regret. I didn't believe that until the night I found the mountain breathing. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had climbed looking for a ghost, not a god. The mist was thick enough to erase the path behind me, and yet I kept walking as if the guilt in my chest were guiding me somewhere it already knew. By the time I reached the gates, the snow had melted around my feet. The doors stood taller than any tree I'd ever seen, carved with faces that looked halfway between human and storm. They were sealed shut, the cracks filled with centuries of moss. I touched the surface, meaning only to rest my hand, but the stone exhaled beneath my palm, a slow, patient breath, warm as flesh. That was when the silence changed. The air thickened, like a sigh turned solid. Beneath my hand, the carvings moved. Not all at once. One eyelid first, then another. Dozens of stone faces waking from the same long sleep. I should have run. But when the gates groaned open, I heard my name whispered from inside. Not shouted, not called. Whispered, like an apology spoken by something that already knew I wouldn't forgive it. The hall was vast and empty, lit only by lamps that hadn't burned for a century and somehow still glowed. The air smelled of wet iron and lilies. On the floor lay a single bowl, half filled with clear water. When I looked down, the reflection staring back was me, only younger, eyes unscarred, hands clean. The reflection moved first. It smiled, and with my voice it said, "You're late." My knees weakened. I wanted to deny it, to tell it that I'd never been here before, but I had. I felt it in the air, in the ache behind my ribs. I had stood in that same spot a lifetime ago. I had made a vow here. "Do you remember what you asked for?" It whispered. I shook my head. The reflection dipped a finger into the water, and ripples bloomed outward like veins. In the disturbed surface, faces appeared, faces I knew. The woman I had left, the friend I had betrayed, the child who had called me father only once. Each one looked at me and blinked. The sound was like a door unlocking. I fell to my knees beside the bowl. "Why show me this?" The reflection leaned closer, eyes bright as candlelight. "Because the temple doesn't open for confession," it said. "It opens for proof." "Proof of what?" I asked. It smiled again, the way I used to, before regret taught me how not to. "That you're finally ready to mean sorry." The first door closed behind me before I touched it, stone grinding against stone, slow and certain, like it knew I'd never walk back through. The sound echoed down the corridor until it folded into my heartbeat. The lamps along the walls flared to life in pairs, guiding me forward. The temple didn't feel old anymore, it felt awake. Every few steps, I heard a faint breath not my own. The rhythm of someone following too closely to be seen. I turned once, twice. Nothing. But when I looked forward again, my shadow had grown longer. The first room was small. A single window opened onto darkness so complete it looked solid. In the center sat a table, and on it, a wooden bowl of rice gone cold. The smell was familiar. Too familiar. I hadn't smelled that in years. Then the wind shifted, and I wasn't in the temple anymore. I was back in my father's house, sitting at the same table, younger, full of pride and spite. He had cooked for me, as he always did when he wanted peace. I remember refusing to eat. I remember saying, "You only feed me when you're guilty." The walls around me trembled. The old man at the table lifted his head. But it wasn't my father now. It was the reflection from the bowl, older, watching me with that same quiet disappointment. I whispered, "I didn't mean it." The voice that answered came from everywhere at once. Regret begins when the meal is cold. The room folded in on itself. When the darkness peeled back, I was alone again in the corridor, the taste of cold rice still on my tongue. The bowl was gone, but my stomach felt full of stones. I walked on. The next door waited already open, candlelight flickering from within. This one smelled of wet paper and ink. My hands began to shake before I even stepped through. I knew that smell too. Inside, parchment covered the walls, each page filled with my handwriting, letters I'd never sent, apologies I'd written and burned before anyone could read them. My own words had become the temple's skin. I reached out and touched one. I should have stayed. The ink bled under my fingers, soaking into my palm until it looked like veins. Every line I touched began to whisper its sentence aloud. One voice, two, then dozens, each page reciting a sin I'd wrapped in eloquence. "Stop," I said. "I know." The whispering stopped. One page fell from the wall and drifted to the floor. On it, written in smaller letters, were words I didn't remember writing. "It isn't enough to know. You must ache the knowing." The air thickened. My chest tightened. The ink on my palm began to crawl upward, spreading to my wrist, my arm, across my chest, until I could feel the weight of every word I'd failed to speak out loud. I ran. The corridor bent without direction, floor merging with ceiling, time folding over itself until I no longer knew if I was ascending or descending. When I finally stopped, gasping, I found myself before a door without light. On it, carved deep into the wood, was a single word. Her. The sound of rain began behind the door, soft at first, then steady, the rhythm of a memory that never stopped falling. I reached for the handle, but my reflection's voice spoke from the dark around me. Some regrets are not forgiven, only repeated. I closed my eyes, exhaled once, and pushed the door open anyway. The rain stopped the moment I crossed the threshold. The room beyond was bright, softly, unnaturally so, the way sunlight looks when remembered through tears. There was a single window, fogged from within, and in front of it stood a figure draped in white. She didn't turn when I spoke her name. It came out cracked, like a word I hadn't used in decades. The air between us smelled of jasmine and ash, her scent when she used to burn offerings before sleeping. When she finally moved, it wasn't to face me. It was to trace her fingers across the window glass. Each touch left a faint mark, 5 pale streaks like scars of light. "You shouldn't have come back," she said. The voice was hers. The tone wasn't. "I didn't know there was a way," I said. "There always is. You only had to remember why you left." She turned then. Her face was perfect, except for the eyes. Behind the irises moved faint ripples, as if her gaze were made of water trying to hold its shape. "The temple doesn't give second chances," she said. "It gives repetitions." I wanted to reach for her, to explain everything I never did. The fear, the selfishness, the day I watched her walk away without calling her name. But when I stepped forward, the sound of my footfall came twice. I looked down. She had moved the same way, perfectly mirroring me. The space between us vanished, and for an instant, I felt her heartbeat align with mine. The temperature of the room dropped. She whispered, "Do you remember the night you promised to stay?" I nodded. "Then why did you dream of leaving even while you kissed me?" I had no answer. The window behind her flared white, and inside it I saw a reflection. Not hers, but the moment itself, the younger versions of us, locked in a tableau of almosts. She smiled the same sad smile from that night. "Regret," she said softly, "is memory with a heartbeat." The window shattered outward. Rain poured through the opening, but it didn't touch her. She stepped closer, and when her hand brushed my cheek, I felt no warmth, only the weight of everything she never forgave. "Say it," she whispered. "I'm sorry." Her expression didn't change. Not enough. I was afraid. Still, not enough. I fell to my knees, the water rising around me, cold and clear and endless. "I loved you," I said. At that, she bent down and pressed her forehead to mine. "Then you'll have to stay until I believe you." The room darkened. The rain stopped again, mid-fall, frozen in the air. I looked around. She was gone. The walls were gone. Only the echo of her heartbeat remained, pulsing in the water that reached my chest. When it receded, I was back in the corridor, drenched and shaking. My reflection waited at the far end, smiling faintly. "You opened her door," it said. "Most don't." "Is she free?" I asked. The reflection tilted its head. "No, you are." Then it stepped backward into the next chamber and vanished. The air shifted. The scent of burnt paper and lilies returned. Another door waited, darker, older. Across it, carved deep into stone, were 4 words that made my throat close. "When you became me." I didn't want to know what waited there, but the temple does not wait for want. I opened the door. The air in the next chamber was colder but not dead. It pulsed, slowly, like the pause between 2 heartbeats. A faint glow crawled up the walls, veins of light running beneath the stone, converging toward a mirror that wasn't a mirror at all. It was made of liquid, standing upright, trembling as if it breathed. I stood before it, and the reflection smiled first. Not the polite smile of greeting, but the kind I used to wear when I lied to myself convincingly. The figure in the mirror looked stronger, younger, untouched by the 30 years of avoidance I carried in my bones. "I know you," I said. "You should," it answered. "I am what you became when you stopped looking." The surface rippled as it spoke, but the voice came from behind me. I turned. No one. Only the echo folding in on itself, slow and deliberate. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Because you are," it said. "The temple needs its doors. Every century, someone comes heavy enough with guilt to open them. I was born from yours." I wanted to deny it, but denial didn't survive here. The words melted on my tongue before they could form. I stepped closer. The reflection moved the same way, not copying, but anticipating. "Do you regret enough?" it asked. "I think so." "Thinking isn't the currency here." It raised a hand, and so did I, though I hadn't meant to. The surface of the mirror grew solid and cold under my palm. I felt its pulse through the glass, steady, human. My breath caught. It was real. The reflection leaned closer until our foreheads nearly touched. Its eyes were calm, patient, ancient. "Regret," it said, "isn't punishment. It's instruction. But some of us take too long to learn. What happens when we finally do?" It smiled. "Then one of us must stop remembering." I felt the pull before I understood. The glass softened, then gave way. My fingers sank through as if into water, and the reflection's hand gripped mine from the other side. It was warm, too warm. The light around us brightened, the veins on the walls pulsing faster, sinking to the rhythm of my racing heart. "Let go," I said. "You came here to be undone," it replied. "That's the only way the temple closes." The pull grew stronger. I tried to step back, but my feet slid forward instead. I was being drawn in, inch by inch, until the liquid reached my shoulders. The world warped. Every regret I'd faced echoed at once, overlapping into a single sound. Then, as my face touched the surface, it spoke again, softly. "When someone is ready to regret, the temple must remember them." My breath failed. I didn't fall. I reversed. The world folded, and I was standing outside the temple again, just as I had the night it opened. But my hands were clean, my reflection still, my heartbeat gone. I turned toward the gates. They were closing, slow and heavy. From inside I heard my own voice whisper, "You're late." And then the sound of stone sealing itself shut, the kind that doesn't promise another century. When the doors closed, the sound lingered in the mountain air longer than any echo should. The valley below looked the same. Trees, black with rain, wind tracing old paths. Yet something had shifted. The mountain was listening. I touched my chest and found stillness there. No pulse, no tremor, only the faint hum of stone beneath skin. The realization didn't frighten me. It felt almost earned, like a lesson written in a language I had finally learned to read. I walked the temple's outer steps and looked toward the horizon. A century's worth of storms rolled in the distance, slow and patient. I knew that by the time they reached this place, someone else would be walking up through the fog, someone carrying their own unfinished sorrow. I sat beside the great doors and waited. The rain began, fine and constant. Every drop that touched the stone whispered something small, half a word, as if practicing speech. I leaned closer and heard the rhythm. It was my name, or maybe everyone's. When the thunder came, it didn't strike. It bowed. The lamps inside the temple flickered to life, though no hand lit them. Their glow painted the doors from within, showing faint silhouettes. Rooms breathing, memories rearranging, the reflection preparing its next face. I closed my eyes and whispered what the temple had taught me. Regret is not what breaks you, I said. It's what opens the door. The mountain exhaled. The rain stopped mid-air, suspended like dust in sunlight. For a moment, everything waited. Sound, wind, time, before the world inhaled again. When the air moved, the doors opened just a finger's width. Enough for one breath to escape. Enough for me to know the temple would live another 100 years. I smiled, though I no longer had the need to breathe, and whispered to the coming storm, "Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready to regret." They say the mountain sleeps until someone climbs it, carrying more sorrow than strength. That's when the doors open, not to forgive, but to listen. And for one brief moment, the world lets a single soul rewrite its ending. If you ever find yourself there, you won't see a monk or a god waiting. You'll only find a mirror made of rain, and a voice that sounds exactly like your own, asking the same question the mountain asked me. Are you ready to regret honestly this time? The temple will open again one day, maybe in 100 years, maybe tonight. But when it does, it won't be looking for faith. It will be looking for someone who finally understands that regret is not weakness. It's the door you build yourself when you have nowhere left to go.